Welcome to the Newsa-Cast YouTube channel. These Red Smith Banquet throwbacks are exclusive interviews of sports legends, powerful media personalities, and influential coaches. You won't find these anywhere else. Subscribe below and enjoy. Well, already, Tosh, it is that time again, once again, for the Red Smith Banquet throwback. Tosh, we are going to go back to 1998. And I think this person's very appropriate for the episode that we had with Pat Schwanke, a longtime high school coach. Well, I can think of no better NFL coach than the person we had here, legendary Mr. Bill Walsh, R.I.P.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the guy who, when you talk about West Coast offense, here he is. This is the guy you talk about, right?
It's the start of the coaching tree, right? Mike Holmgren, have everybody underneath that. It basically starts with Bill Walsh, godfather of the West Coast offense. I mean, he is the man.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think, you know, along with this episode, you talk about somebody who was a builder of character and a builder of people. And this is what he did as well. I think a lot of his former players will tell you that. So just a great individual.
Yeah, absolutely. So he came to another fantastic Red Smith banquet. Like I said, 1998, we had Sal Bando, Milwaukee Brewer, legendary third baseman, Brewer coach, Bob Cousy. Now remember Bob Cousy?
Yep.
NBA great, just an incredible guy. He was here, and then of course Bill Walsh. So a heck of a time we had at the Radisson Paper Valley Hotel that January night in 1998. So sit back and enjoy Bill Walsh.
We're very pleased to have Mr. Bill Walsh with us tonight. Bill is known as the architect of the West Coast offense, and many feel the most innovative offensive mind in football. Bill's a California native. He began his coaching career in 1957 as a high school coach. In 1960, he joined Marv Levy's staff at California as a defensive coordinator, joined Stanford's coaching staff in 63 as recruiting coordinator and defensive backs coach. No offense here. Walsh began his NFL coaching career in 66 with the Oakland Raiders as offensive backfield coach under Al Davis. In 67, he moved to the Cincinnati Bengals under Paul Brown for 8 years, followed by a one-year stint in San Diego. Walsh then served as head coach at Stanford University for 2 seasons, the 77 and 78 season, before joining the Niners. At Stanford, he compiled a 17-7 record, including a pair of bowl victories in the Astro Bluebonnet and the Sun Bowls. He returned to Stanford in 92 and directed the Cardinals to a 10-3 record that concluded with a New Year's win over Penn State in the Blockbuster Bowl. Walsh's first stint with the Niner organization was one of unparalleled success. He inherited a 214 club in 1979 and through shrewd personal decisions built San Francisco's talent pool to include the likes of Joe Montana, Dwight Clark, Ronnie Lott, Earl Cooper, among countless others. The result was in 1981, after just 3 years, he orchestrated a masterpiece that resulted in the first world championship in franchise history as the 49ers captured Super Bowl 16 with a 2016 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. Under Walsh's guidance, the Niners would twice more reign supreme with victories in Super Bowls 19 and 23. He retired from the NFL coaching ranks in 1988 with a career record 102, 63, and 1, which includes a 10-4 record in postseason play. He currently works for the Niners as an administrative assistant to the coaching staff. In 1993, Bill Walsh was inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame as a coach. A warm welcome to our speaker, Bill Walsh. Bill?
I am a Packer. I am a cheesehead. I decided in the third quarter of the championship game. Well, after Bob Cousy's remarks, it really is probably as fitting as anything that we talk a little bit about how Mike Holmgren and Ron Wolf have brought the Packers to preeminence in professional sports, the greatest franchise at this time in professional sports. And in a sense, the baton's been passed or grabbed away from the 49ers. And I'm naturally privileged to have associated with Ron, with the Raiders, and of course with Mike Holmgren as sort of a, I guess you'd say, a protege, and Mike Shanahan, of course, who's with the Denver team. But the kinds of things that Bob talked about are the issues and the forces that work on today's professional franchises, and certainly the coach. So how could Ron, who put together an assemblage of outstanding players with deft moves, evaluating athletes, contractual negotiations that were miraculous in a sense, to bring together the personnel for Mike and his staff to work with. And then for Mike to deal with today's locker room, which has changed dramatically in just 10 years, but certainly in 20 or 30 years. And the challenge for the coaches, the challenge for the leadership among the squad members is, in a sense, almost insurmountable. Very few can survive it. And Mike has, along with Ron. And so the Packers are at the pinnacle at this point, and naturally I expect that they'll come home with a victory. God. So let's talk just a little bit about how they had to go about it. Number one, Mike had to develop, as we did with the 49ers, and Mike was a part of it, an atmosphere among the players in which at some point your teachings reflected on their productivity on the field, on their performance. And it takes, in a sense, a matter of conditioning people to think in a very firm and strong sense. And a couple of good examples of that would be, they had a documentary on the Discovery Channel a year or two ago. And they had a grouping of World War II flyers sitting around a table. And it was an anniversary, maybe the 50th anniversary of their flying over Germany. And at that time, when 100 bombers would leave England, probably 75 would come back. Each plane carried 10 men, and each plane, of course, that was hit would go down. It wasn't very pleasant going to the ground because you couldn't get out of the plane, and it took 3 or 4 minutes to finally hit. And yet these men would continue to come back and do that, fly these raids over occupied France and Germany. And these men were there in their old Eisenhower outfits with their epaulets, and the question was asked to each one of them, why did you do it? In a different way. And in virtually every case, each of them said, because I couldn't let my buddies down. I couldn't let them down. I would do anything for them. They had bonded. They would sacrifice their own lives for each other. The same kind of Discovery Channel event occurred about 3 months later, and it had a platoon of men from Vietnam, Hispanic, European Americans, African Americans, Asian. Of 46 men, about 27 made it home. And during that war, there are many who say that we fought our most courageous and bravest fights in small units scattered all over Vietnam when surrounded. And the same kind of question was broached to each one of them. And in every case, I couldn't let my buddies down. I couldn't let them down. They weren't talking about winning for America necessarily, or winning for some altruistic cause. They were talking about something very simple. These guys brought together from all over the country, and in a sense forced into that issue, were willing to die for each other. And that is the very essence of what Mike Holmgren has done with the Green Bay Packers. Those men have bonded. They're willing to sacrifice for each other. They're willing to do whatever it takes. And it's a long road. It's not simple. And as has been pointed out earlier this evening, it's so easy to talk in grandiose terms. A couple of glasses of wine, tomorrow we climb the Matterhorn. 4 or 5 glasses of wine later, let's all go to bed. Maybe we can do it tomorrow, day after. It's easy to talk about it. But to finally put that mechanism together and have it function fluidly and with precision is most difficult. Because as you're developing the skills of your athletes, as you spend endless hours precisely organizing every practice of training camp, to where 4 weeks into training camp you know exactly what will be done, which plays will be called in the practice, a complete inventory of practice sessions, off-season conditioning, the stress of individual skills of each athlete, locating, identifying, finding the skills that that athlete needs to complete his task in a championship form. All of these things have to be done, but in today's locker room, which is much different than the locker rooms in the 80s, the 70s, or the 60s. It has to be accomplished. So the major task for Mike was to bring a diverse group of people together. Because in the National Football League locker room, as in other professional sports, you have the superstar who's gained national fame, gained national visibility, becomes a spokesman for any number of commercial activities, and you have the role player who might make in salary maybe 1/10 of what the star makes. And yet they're expected to play side by side in a game. And all too often, the role player performs better than the star. But people have established their own territories. You certainly have an ethnic condition. African American, European American athletes must learn to communicate, appreciate each other, overlook certain things, learn to bond and care for each other. In football, because of the stratifying of all the different positions that are played, you have people that get sort of territorial. Our offensive line performed well, but the defensive backs over in the other meeting room failed us. The quarterback let us down. The fullback fumble. You know all the litany of all these things. You have to find a way for people to bridge those gaps. We have in the locker room today people with strong spiritual feelings, others with absolutely none, some forcing their feelings on others, people from different geographic areas of the country. You have the veteran player who's been a free agent somewhere else and comes to you for the first year. You have a young player in his first year out of Vanderbilt University trying to make the team. All of these people have to be brought together by the head coach and by his staff to develop that bonding that we spoke of. And at the same time, they must function with precision on the field. About 20% of the game of football, American football, is chance. Simple chance. No matter how well you prepare, no matter how proficient you are, there is a chance that things will go against you. The officiating, bless their hearts. Just the shape of the football will do it for you. But all of those conditions can affect or impact your ability to get your job done. So for Mike, how could he bring about this successful process? Number one, leadership. Leadership basically is competence. It's not an approach to the team, not some inspirational remarks that you make just before the game starts that makes a difference, believe me. because you make your inspirational remarks, and in reality, you feel darn good about it. By the time they get out the tunnel, they have forgotten about it. They're thinking of the other team. So it's not the inspiration. What Mike was able to do was demonstrate continually he was damn good at what he did. He called the plays. He set up the game plan. The players learned to respect and appreciate it. And that's really where leadership is. It's competence and expertise. After that, it's naturally communication. But Mike established the fact that he could do his job better than any other coach. And the players had a standard to set and to follow. The next is learning to communicate, allowing people to interact with each other. In Mike's staff meetings, working with Ron in the personnel department, there's open interaction, interfacing between people. And I can give you a good example of it. And I really hearken back to when, as a youngster, I was in the Cub Scouts in Southern California. We came out of our Cub Scout meeting Saturday morning. The two spinsters across the street's cat was high in a eucalyptus tree. The spinsters had been in the neighborhood since I was a child. Maybe 20, 30 years they'd been there. That cat had been with them. And it was up to us to get the cat down. They were beside themselves. One of the guys ran out with a ladder, fell back, limped off. Another one tried to climb the tree, slid, fell off. One of them got his dad's rake, threw it, started throwing rocks, couldn't get it down. Somebody went in a home and called the fire department. We didn't realize it. We heard that siren coming all the way across town. Slowly but surely, louder, louder, here it came. Handsome young men, big red fire truck. Up went the ladder, up went the man. Everybody was on the street by then, lined up on the curbs. Pulled the cat down, everyone cheered. Down he came. Cookies and milk for the firemen by the spinsters. We got in the truck, played like we were driving. It was time to go. They drove off and ran over the cat. So it's Mike's job to develop a plan that would bring young players along, take full advantage of each athlete's individual skills. But more importantly, in today's sport, and in your own personal workplace or environment, it's contingency planning that now makes the difference. At one time, the big three automakers had full control of the automobile production in the world, really. And Chrysler had the best suspension and brakes. Chevrolet, or General Motors, had the body. The Ford had the engine. And there was sort of an even break there. People learned to live with that. And if anyone had ever questioned them about any of these kinds of things, raised their hands and said, what if someone else decides to build cars in Japan or Germany, they would be shouted down. You are a loser. You're a loser. Nobody is going to take us on. Wasn't very long after, naturally, we know what's happened. And of course, people are regaining now their stride again in Detroit. But the point is, there has been a time when no one would question leadership. No one would have an alternative plan. No one would project what competition might do. And as you know, in your workplace, new products are coming online almost every day. New companies are coming up. Where I live in San Francisco area, the Silicon Valley, people can't even keep up with new products that are superior to the ones on the market. You go to a computer store, and you've got so many variations and so many prices now. The competition is out there. Well, in football, it's contingency planning now that's made the difference. When you observed our team in the 80s, an example of Joe Montana taking his team, some may recall it, in my age group at least, some may recall it driving his team the length of the field in the final 2 or 3 minutes of the Super Bowl to beat the Bengals. People said it was Joe Montana. It was. But in reality, it was our practicing a so-called 2-minute offense every day, all through training camp, for 10 years. So that when our team took the field, I didn't have to gather people around me and say, this is really important. I didn't have to say that. They're playing for the World's Championship. I didn't have to say a word. Everyone knew what they were to do. Because in our planning, we had a sequence of plays we would call in that situation. Naturally, I'm telling you the story because in that case it worked. We drove the length of the field and scored the winning touchdown with seconds to go. But we did it with a series of short gains and short passes to Jerry Rice, to John Taylor for the touchdown, Roger Craig. I can go on and on about those kinds of things. My point is, it's not last-second heroics that does it for us. For the young athlete, don't think of those kinds of things in those terms. It's really, as people at the table have stated tonight, it's your basic competence in what you do. It's your skills and your techniques. It's your ability to apply them without a lot of thought. For us to take the field and go 95 yards for a winning score in the Super Bowl didn't take a lot of thought on the part of our athletes because that regimen had been built in. As I pointed out about Mike, he had to teach his team the skills. We were so proficient in the skills of doing our job that no one had to really say anything to each other. Everyone had to do their job. 11 men. Any one of them fail, along the way, any one of them fail, we lose. One mistake. It took us 13 plays to make that drive. I've seen the Packers doing the same kinds of things. So my point is, in today's environment, athletically, in sports or in the workplace, is contingency planning. We had a plan for virtually every situation that would come up, and we would practice it. We didn't depend on heroics. So anyone that thinks heroics will do it, you'll elevate you. We hear it from our color commentators all the time, where he elevated his game. Who are we kidding? If you think under stress you're going to do better, you're kidding yourself, unless you maintain your game. If Pete Sampras in Wimbledon decides to serve the ball harder because it's the finals, he's going to double fault and he knows it. So he has to play his game. And we have to allow for different situations and plan for them. So in today's workplace, in the Silicon Valley, situational adjustments are always in place. Contingency planning is always there. And people mobilize and are ready for it. Meanwhile, you have a main thrust and a main philosophy as to what you do. So in this week's game, let's just take a look at how Mike's team handles each of these situations. When it's third down and 1 or 2 yards to go, we've all seen that. When his team gets to the 5-yard line, going in for a score. When his team has the ball on their own 1-yard line and has to drive out. When it's third down and long yards to go, what will Mike be doing? All of these things he's been practicing, and I can go on and on about the situations, all these things he's been practicing since his mini camps, his training camp, all season now to the Super Bowl, and he's been doing it for a number of years. So his team is fully mobilized to do these things. So beyond all of the rhetoric and dialogue and commentary on television, there's a science, there's an art form in developing among people a willingness and the ability to communicate with each other under stress. For us, in my final years of coaching, I came to the same general conclusion, the fact that each player is an extension of his teammate, and who is then, I suppose, an extension of his coach. But let's put the coaching aside, the players. In football, and I'm sure in baseball and basketball, all sports, these men play for each other, just as those flyers did over Europe and our infantrymen did in Vietnam. They play for each other. When our offensive unit was on the field, they were playing for their defensive teammates who were standing on the sideline watching them perform, and vice versa. They played for each other, so that when Fred Quillen snapped the ball, he was an extension of Joe Montana, who took it. And when Joe took 5 disciplined steps and threw the ball to Dwight Clark, he was an extension of Keith Fawnhurst, who was blocking for him. But he was an extension of Randy Cross, who was an extension of Ronnie Lott and Carlton Williamson on the sideline. We were all connected, and we felt it. We felt that connection. And in a sense, that's the bottom line. That's the epitome of competition. Until you reach that, or reach a form of it, you're really not fully mobilized. So those are some thoughts for you. How about the game? All right? For Denver to win, Elway is going to have to complete, let's keep this all in the room, of course. For Denver to win, Elway will have to complete 25 passes out of maybe 35. He's going to have to make a number of third down completions. He's going to have to run with the ball at least 4 or 5 times to make the first down himself, and he's going to have a career day. But if Elway thinks for a second he's going to elevate his game because it's the Super Bowl, he'll self-destruct, which he did in the last Super Bowl against the 49ers, if some of you may remember. He had a terrible day. So John must understand that going into the game. He's got to stay within his own game, but he's got to be precise and make clear-cut decisions or run with the football. The Denver running game has got to show up in the second half. In the NFL, the running game in the first half has to be good fortune, because until the other team tires somewhat, you can't run the football in the NFL, just as the Green Bay did against the 49ers in the second half 2 weeks ago. So the Denver running game is going to have to show up. But for Denver to win, Green Bay has to make some mistakes. Brett Favre will have to come up with, which will not happen, I guarantee it, but he would have to come up with one of those zany plays that once in a while he's capable of. We all have seen him. That last second pass laying on your back to somebody. That would have to happen to keep Denver in the football game. For Green Bay to win is for Mike and his staff and that team to play as a unit they have been doing all year. To be precise, to be able to communicate when necessary in clear, concise language, to interact and interface with each other during the game and on the sideline, and to play up to their full potential with their skills that Mike and them have developed, and stay within their system of football. If that's the case, 31-21. Should be a great game. I would like to congratulate all of the winners tonight, because having represented Stanford University, I directly connect with achievement off the field and on the field, off the court, on the court, because that's the complete person. We have too many lost souls who are former athletes. I don't see that many in the room tonight, fewer skulking outside there maybe, but very few, especially in this community. My point is, we at Stanford were the best athletic program really in the nation, winning more NCAA championships than any other school by far. Blend academic achievement, community achievement, social achievement with athletic achievement, and win championships. And it can be done. There's a terrible flaw in our intercollegiate athletic scene, we all know, for the non-student to somehow be participating on the field, and for the media to glorify those particular people. So for you who've won these achievement awards tonight, congratulations. And for everyone at the head table, especially my two friends here who are just incredible people, what a pleasure and an honor to be around them, or associate with them, and with you. Thanks for having me.
Please subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when we post another great episode or interview. Download the podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for your support.